All right, today we're going to look at Franklin D. Roosevelt's plan to get the United States out of the Great Depression, and it's called the New Deal. Roosevelt is the Democratic candidate who comes into office in 1932, replacing Herbert Hoover in his hands-off approach, the whole laissez-faire, the economy will fix itself approach. Roosevelt is taking the opposite approach. He is going to be very hands-on, very aggressive, lots of involvement from the government to change and rectify the problems of the Great Depression. So here's a picture of FDR sitting at a desk, staring thoughtfully, trying to come up with a solution to the Great Depression. So again, his plan, the New Deal, it's got three main goals. He's looking to provide immediate relief. He's trying to provide recovery. He's trying to provide reform. Within the first 100 days of the presidency of FDR, this is like the most aggressive approach, the most aggressive time period where he is trying anything and everything to fix the economy. So he's pulling together some of the brightest and best economists and people in government to try and solve the issue. Step one, the first goal is to basically shut down the banks. It's called the bank holiday. The idea is shut them all down, and then only the banks that can be successful, only the banks that are good enough to reopen will allow them to reopen. So if the bank can meet the demands of the depositors, if they got enough money available, they can reopen. If not, you stay closed. He wants only productive, good banks operating and open. The next thing, he's got to earn the trust of the American people. He's got to reinstill confidence in the government, in the banks, and he does this through a series of radio broadcasts, which he nicknames the fireside chats, because he would sit by the fire in the White House and he would give these speeches over the radio, and he would just talk about the New Deal plan, what his goals are, what he wants to do, how he's going to do it. And when Americans tuned in and listened to their president on the radio for the first time, it made them feel really good. Like they felt like, okay, here's a president reaching out to us, connecting to us, reassuring us, telling us everything's going to be okay, and laying out the steps of the New Deal plan and how he's going to fix everything. So again, the New Deal plan itself, every program that the government creates in the New Deal is aimed at either providing immediate relief, meaning immediate finances, providing food for people, immediate job relief. Let's get people working again. Let's, get them through the day-to-day of life, of living in the United States during the Great Depression. Some of the programs in the New Deal were aimed at recovery, helping the economy recover, sort of in the short to medium range to long term. And then some of the goals of the New Deal were aimed at reforming, changing the existing economic system so that we never have another Great Depression like this ever again. Relief, recovery, reform. That's the basic gist of the New Deal. So initially, again, that relief aspect, let's provide jobs. We've got like 13 million people who don't have jobs in 1933. So this is going to be step one of President Roosevelt, finding relief. One of the government agencies under the New Deal is called the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. And essentially, the idea and the goal was, let's hire a bunch of young men to essentially work in conservation. Let's have people plant trees. Let's have people build and develop national parks, state parks, whatever. Any job within the conservation realm, it's going to provide work. It's going to provide an income for these people. And we're going to get some neat projects out of the mix too. Some state parks, local, federal parks. Conservation's a good thing, so it's kind of a win-win in that regard. And the CCC is mostly aimed towards the relief aspect. Let's get people jobs. Let's get them an income. The next plan of the New Deal, the first New Deal, is the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. All right, all these different acronyms. It kind of gets confusing, but the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, this is going to provide federal money to the states, and then the states will then determine, all right, how do we then allocate, how do we distribute that money to people that need it so they can put food on the table, feed themselves, feed their kids, and it's also going to go towards creating some jobs, but essentially this is mainly a relief program helping the states deal with their unemployment issues and people with not enough income coming in. Another big one of the first New Deal in 1933 is the Agricultural Adjustment Act. This one was aimed at helping out farmers. Remember in the 1920s, they had overproduced, which drove down prices, which made it harder for farmers to pay off all their loans to the banks, which made them default, and they lost their property, lost their farm, lost their home. So the AAA is aimed to sort of help farmers recover from those real low prices of their crops. The idea was, let's reduce the amount of available farm products on the markets. So it was kind of controversial because you had farmers literally destroying their crops, literally leaving part of their land, leaving it alone and not planting things. They had people killing livestock, and that seemed kind of counterintuitive. Here you got millions of people, no job, yet we're wasting food. But again, the economics of it is what's really driving the AAA. We have to make all the farm goods, farm products more scarce to drive up those prices, which will then in turn help the farming industry. It was a hard pill to swallow for a lot of farmers and for a lot of Americans. But again, FDR is reassuring people, you gotta trust us on this. It'll make sense. It'll work out in the long run. And it did for a while. Eventually in 1936, though, the Supreme Court steps in and they look at the AAA and they say, that's kind of overstepping the boundaries. The federal government can't, based on the Constitution, we can't regulate this industry that much. It's the free market system. We can't really tell farmers exactly how to run their farm. But for 3 years, they made a good, effort to sort of chip away at the agricultural issues and sort of help farmers out. But ultimately, the AAA was found unconstitutional. E for effort. And that's kind of the heart of what FDR is doing with the New Deal. He's going to try anything and everything. If it's constitutional, great. If it's not, well, hey, at least I'm trying. That was kind of his approach. Another one, the Tennessee Valley Authority. So in the Tennessee Valley, where the Tennessee River is, you get a lot of flooding. So if you look in this area here, the map of the U.S., here's Tennessee, all in orange. This river valley area was prone to flooding, which makes it harder for farmers. So part of the TVA was to build a series of dams along the river, and through those dams, it would help alleviate the flooding, and also those dams would generate electricity, which the states and governments would control, and they could then sell that electricity at a cheaper price to the people living in this area. Hey, people who are suffering in a depression, they're going to need anything and everything to be cheaper, and providing electricity to people also makes them more productive. It's kind of a win-win in that regard. That's the TVA. Another one, the National Industrial Recovery Act. Okay, this is the law which creates the NRA, not the National Rifle Association, but the National Recovery Administration in 1933. So this is overseeing businesses, and it's trying to create a system where businesses are going to regulate themselves. It's going to push to create more child labor laws. It's going to push for a minimum wage. It's going to try and establish a set rule and code for how businesses establish their prices. This was kind of controversial too. It would kind of overstep the boundaries of the government telling businesses too much of what they can and cannot do. But for a while, it was, taking a step in the right direction. It also creates what's known as the Public Works Administration. And the Public Works Administration, their job was to basically it's the agency that is set up to hire people to do certain jobs, whether it's building roads, railroads, shipyards, hospitals, schools. If you look around our local area, if you've ever wondered, why do all the schools look the same? A lot of our schools in this area were built during the Great Depression as part of these NIRA sort of initiatives and PWA initiatives. Another New Deal program, this one's aimed at reforming the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This is aimed at reforming, changing our banking industry. Right? The banks were giving out all these really terrible loans to stockbrokers who then gave out money to people buying stocks. That's really risky. The FDIC is going to ensure that our banks are more stable, more secure. They're also going to pass legislation that's going to prevent that sort of risky investment from stockbrokers and giving out risky loans. But basically, when you had the stock market crash and everyone ran on the banks all at once and everyone withdrew all their money, leaving millions of people without any money in the bank, this run on the bank was problematic because, of course, people don't have their money. So the FDIC is an insurance program that guarantees in 1933 that you'll have up to $2,500 backed by the federal government. So if there is a massive run, you can rest assured that at least you'll get up to $2,500 back. The FDIC is still around today. If you go to any bank, you will see this gold logo on the door, and due to inflation, it's not $2,500 anymore, but it's up to $250,000 guaranteed for keeping your money in the bank. All right, so the New Deal, not so much of a big deal though, however. It doesn't end the Great Depression. It's not like, hey, 1933 New Deal programs and we're good. It's gonna take a lot longer, but it's a step in the right direction. It's gonna make people feel more confident. People are gonna start trusting the government. People are feeling good about the direction we're going for the most part, but we still got a long ways to go. We still got a lot of unemployment. But at least FDR and his new, fresh government hands-on approach seems to be taking the country in the right direction.